Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to RotoCurve.com. I'm Josh Collacchi, and we're here to discuss FanDuel's Week 6 NFL wide receiver picks. Of course, this week there are a lot of good matchups for other positions. We've already discussed quarterbacks and running backs, and there will also be a tight end video coming up after this, so be sure to check that out, along with all the rest of the free tools at RotoCurve.com. And the one thing that we mentioned in those other videos is there are some good matchups. Now, there aren't a lot of matchups for wide receiver, especially in the top tier. So we're really going to have to find some guys at the top that are really worth playing, because I think this is a week that you're probably going to have to spend up at wide receiver to be able to get fantasy points from there, at least in the terms of the safe points, which is what we like to look at for cash games. The first guy that I like, of course, is probably a guy we like every week. He's turned into a little bit of an Antonio Brown kind of thing, and that's DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver from the Houston Texans at just 8,500. He faces the Jaguars in Week 6, and Jacksonville has actually been very good in limiting opposing wide receivers this year. As you can see, they've given up just 739 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, we just said it's not going to be easy to find some guys in good matchups, but a guy like Hopkins with his volume and his targets, it really doesn't matter who he's facing unless you're going to see a top-tier cornerback like a Josh Norman, who we saw earlier this year, who a lot of good receivers have seen earlier this year who've been shut down, and guys like maybe Darrelle Revis or Richard Sherman if you're going to line up on his side too. But the Jaguars do not have a guy like that, at least not right now. So in terms of volume and targets, there really isn't a guy better than DeAndre Hopkins. He's been targeted 74 times in 5 games, which is just absurd. He's been targeted, as you can see, 50 times in his last 3 weeks, and it almost allows him to be successful regardless of how many catches he's likely to have, because chances are a receiver is not going to be targeted that many times without getting many catches. And we've seen him play a lot, and you can see that DeAndre Hopkins is one of the better receivers in the NFL. So considering he's seeing that target volume, considering he's seeing some of the, regardless of who quarterback is with Mallett or Brian Hoyer, he's getting all these targets, and he's really turning them into fantasy points, as only Larry Fitzgerald has more fantasy points than him this year, but he also has a few more touchdowns. So Hopkins is doing it all. He's catching all the passes he can, and considering that target volume, every week it makes for him for a good play, simply because his floor is so high that it's worth picking him in cash games unless he has a really tough matchup. Another guy I like this week is a guy that's sort of flying under the radar because not a lot of people consider him as a wide receiver one. But so far this year, Brandon Marshall has been exactly that. He's notched at least 15.2 FanDuel points in each contest. He's seeing a ton of targets, with averaging over 11 per game. And the fact is, he's still a big red zone target. He's still one of the strongest receivers in the NFL. So if he gets a one-on-one matchup in the end zone, I expect the Jets to go his way. He faces the Redskins in Week 6, and, of course, Washington's very good against the run, but they struggle against the pass, as you can see. They've given up the 8th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers this year, including 6 touchdown passes. So considering Brandon Marshall is a little bit cheaper than a guy like Hopkins at $8,000, he could be a little bit overpriced compared to what some people like to look at him as, because not a lot of people consider him as a wide receiver one. But given his numbers and his targets so far this season, I don't see him as a less than a wide receiver one, maybe a top-tier wide receiver two. So if you can afford to get him into your lineups, I really think he has a nice matchup. And coming off a bye, he's going to see a lot of targets as the top option in the Jets passing game. The third guy I want to discuss is a guy that we've been talking about a lot this year, and you're going to hear him for the next probably 10 years as a budding star. That's Allen Robinson for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Robinson is a guy that came out of Penn State with incredible measurables. He had, I believe, a 43-inch vertical. He ran a sub-4.5 40-yard dash. He's 6'3". I believe he's over 220 pounds. So he checked all the boxes on that side of it. He just had to learn to adjust to the NFL game. And so far this season, he definitely has done it. He's caught 4 catches in all but 1 game, and that was against Josh Norman, who we discussed earlier. Norman's become one of the better cover corners in the NFL. But in the other 4 games, Robinson has those 4 catches. He's seen 42 targets in the last 4 games, getting 9 or more in each of those contests, and he's caught a lot of touchdown passes. Now, he has 4 on the season. He had 2 last week. But if you watch that Jaguars game, he probably could have had another 2. Just simply Blake Bortles didn't see him being open across the middle or deep. So Robinson really has been beating every corner he's seen with the exception of Josh Norman. And this week he gets a Houston Texans defense that has allowed just under 700 yards and 5 touchdowns in the last 4 games to opposing wide receivers. So a guy that's a budding star, he's an athletic freak. He's going to see a ton of targets and a good matchup. He pretty much checks all the boxes you want for a wide receiver 3, and I think he's a little bit underpriced at $6,700. He's definitely going to see his price rise over the next few weeks, especially if he keeps up his current production. So be sure to take advantage of him in a good matchup. Now, real quick, some other guys I do like are Anquan Bolden and Steve Smith. If they both do play, they're 2 of the toughest receivers in the NFL, and they see a lot of targets. And both of them have good matchups against each other as the Niners and the Ravens face off. So be sure to keep all these guys in mind. I do think this is a week to spend up a wide receiver, and I really like Hopkins, Brandon Marshall, and Allen Robinson. And, of course, Larry Fitzgerald still has Carson Palmer, too, so he's another guy to throw out there as well. Be sure to take a look at the rest of these videos, as you can find everything on this channel, and of course all on RotoCurve.com, where you can see free analysis, free tools, and everything you can need to make your DFS experience a successful one and a fun one. Let's win some money this week in week 6. Good luck, everybody.